G'day, Jess. Welcome to the Ultimate Youth Worker podcast.
Hey, Aaron. Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Great, and we're all ISO chic today in the office and trying to get out some recording time. And Jess, you work with Jesuit Social Services here in Melbourne, running a really cool project that we thought all youth workers, particularly in Australia, but youth workers in general, should hear about. So, can you tell us a little bit about your role at JSS and what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. I'm a social worker by trade, and I've been working with JSS for 1.5 years now. And I first began, it was actually my first social work role out of uni at JSS, and I started working with young people in the justice system. But I still have quite a long history of working with young people in schools and volunteer roles and a lot of facilitator roles as well. But it was my first position working with young people in the justice system, supporting them in the community, just to help them face all the multiple barriers that they have to face and help them get their lives back on track. But what I noticed when I was in that role was that there was just so many systemic things against these young people, and they had been let down by the system for quite a long time. And I really got to learn about the justice system and how imperfect it is, and how more often than not, it's not helping young people to actually address root causes of what's going on for them. And so when the opportunity at the organisation came up to manage this campaign, Worth a Second Chance, which was all about giving young people a voice and creating a better justice system that is more just and that listens to young people and responds to what's actually going on for them, the root cause. I was really excited to just have that capacity to make change and be a part of it. So that's kind of how I came into the role. But we actually had a discussion off air about social workers and youth workers. And It's funny because I am technically a social worker, but I almost identify more with the youth work space, just been working in youth work for so long. But so that's my story of how I guess I came into the campaign.
Yep.
And the campaign itself, I'll just give you like a little
Tell us Worth a Second Chance.
Yeah, cool. All right. So about 2 years ago, your listeners may remember there was a lot of noise in the media around young people in the justice system, a lot of derogatory language, things like thugs and gangs and young people. There was this real tough on crime rhetoric that was happening. And it meant that the public was seeing only one dimension of young people and offending, and creating a very binary narrative around bad versus good kids, the bad kids. And there was a real push for punitive measures, so punishment kind of over therapy and things like that. So that was in the media, and basically Worth a Second Chance was born for a need to balance out the representation of young people's voices and advocate for change in the justice system. So when it came, we put a lot of energy into capturing the voices of young people and telling the stories of those that were directly affected and giving them a voice, and bringing those voices into spaces where there were important people that were making decisions in the justice system, and giving them that platform, that stage, and saying, tell your story, because those people are the ones making decisions about your future, in the hopes of creating the change systemically, as well as, we also really wanted to create those videos so that it could be accessible to the general public, and we could start to shift the general public's perception of youth offending, I guess, and young people. So that's where it was born. And we've seen a real shift in, I guess, the media space. They're a bit quieter now around that tough on crime rhetoric and young people and crime. Like, you'll still hear references to gangs and things, but it wasn't what it was. So the climate's a little bit different now. But which means, I guess, we have a bit more space and energy to focus on, greater change within the system and advocating for, what needs to change. Things like, we've been influencing the design of Cherry Creek, which is one of the new youth prisons being built. And, originally that was going to be 223 beds, but they've now committed to less numbers. The new youth justice strategy just came out. God, my book, talking a lot today. I'm just like, talking to myself. So the new youth justice strategy just came out, and we were able to, through our connections and also through, we do a lot of direct practice. So again, your audience might be familiar with JSS programs, because we're kind of in a lot of spaces. We have a lot of employees, a lot of programs running. So we use that knowledge that comes from direct practice and working with young people in the field to then take it to a policy level, which then informs, taking that to a government level. So using that, we've been able to influence, the design of youth justice going forward. And obviously it's never exactly what you want. It's never perfect, but we're the voice in government's ear, I guess, saying like, this is what we know, this is what young people are saying, this is what we know works, there's a better way. So that's kind of a
Big
generalist
picture.
overview, big
Yeah.
picture. But yeah, we do lots of things.
And you spoke about the media attention that the young people, particularly those in detention, got 2 years ago, and those of us who follow the media may remember that the Prime Minister and a few people during that time were mentioning how you couldn't go out in the streets of Melbourne because of the gangs that were around, and that whole rhetoric of young people causing trouble. We often think that that's something that kind of has just been recent in media, but it has a long history. The bodgies and widgies back in the 60s, right through to now. Young people seem to be the cause of all this trouble that's happening in the world. And it's great to hear a service like yours actively stepping up and saying, well, hang on a minute, there's more to this than just media hyper-sensationalism. So that's really great. Can you tell us a little bit more about the campaign as a whole?
Yeah, for sure. So as a whole, we kind of harness, like I said before, the knowledge of the organisation that comes directly from our workers and from the interactions with young people, and filter that into policy, which then filters into our advocacy. So JSS has a real focus on the doing and then the influencing. So Worth a Second Chance fits into organisationally the influencing part of our work. And so we've got this strong lens on bringing all that amazing knowledge that we've collected from direct practice and making sure that it is influential in policy, but also in the public narrative. So we have the videos that I mentioned before that we first created. We continue to engage young people and give them a way to tell their story. And sometimes that could be through a community check-in, which is kind of like this podcast, but it's purely video, where that actually originated out of isolation, because I wanted to keep connecting with people and sharing knowledge, and we couldn't gather obviously in the same room. So went to Zoom to do that. So we have a whole series on YouTube of these check-ins with different professionals in the space, things like restorative justice, or what home means to those who have experienced homelessness, and we've got a young person coming up sharing their story and how they've actually come out of juvenile detention, turned their life around and created several businesses that support young people. A lot of diverse stories in there. One of our workers who has experience in the foster care system. So it's a great place for knowledge, actually, if you're studying at the moment, particularly, and wanting to learn more about the justice space and what alternative approaches are out there and what people are doing. That's kind of like a knowledge sharing space that helps our supporters and helps us educate and share knowledge with other people, because it's a great thing to be like, I might be having a chat with a group of teachers. I'll often jump in on a Zoom now, but we used to go in and actually attend a team meeting.
Yes.
And I'll have a conversation, even if it's 30 minutes, to just provide what we call our unusual allies. So I'd say that youth workers have really solid understanding of why we do the work we do, but a lot of people don't understand what's going on for young people in the justice system. So we have that conversation, we open it up, we invite them in, and by the end of it, their perception of youth crime might have completely shifted, and they're now like, yes, they need housing, they need more support services, and just through a conversation. So we'll jump in and have those things like, so that's part of the work as well. And what we found in those early stages of creating the campaign, we found that through some focus testing, that people just didn't know what they didn't know. Essentially, they were lacking in knowledge. They didn't understand what was going on, and they didn't know anyone that had had that experience in the justice system. And so we designed these kitchen table conversations. We had like a pack where anyone in the community could get their little network together, their community, whether it be your colleagues or your family or a friendship group, sit around the table, whatever table that might be in your kitchen, might be, elsewhere, but sit around a table and open up a discussion, a reflective discussion where people are asked, the first question we ask them is, can you remember a time when you were a young person and you faced a significant challenge? And then can you tell us who helped you at that time? Who helped you with that significant challenge? Because more often than not, the young people that we'll work with don't have those people. That's where we come in, we're those people for them, but they don't have them available in their lives to show up for them time and time again and help them through these challenges. So it's like really building empathy and then building understanding and putting themselves in the shoes of young people in the justice system. So we're still hosting those, but we've sort of transitioned them to online. So that's something that people can do to be involved actually. So if they wanted to host a conversation, we have like a whole sort of guide kit that they can feel empowered to do that with their family or with their group of friends. And I'm actually getting a sense that at this point in time, in this climate, there's a real hunger for meaningful conversations and critical conversations and educative conversations. So that's something that we do, the kitchen table conversations. And we also host events, like we host our justice symposiums where we get everyone together that are involved in justice. I don't know, those are sort of the main things that we do, as well as advocating to government, obviously bringing out reports. And I've been creating a little animation at the moment to support the Raise the Age campaign. So I don't know if you've heard much about that, Aaron. Yeah.
I was about to segue into that. So great. So
perfect.
The work that you're doing in your project at the moment fits really well with a wider Australia-wide discussion around the age of detention for young people. And we know that across Australia, young people 10 years old are in detention, and there's been some discussions around all of Australia really about raising the age that a young person could be detained. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that campaign and how you fit together with them?
Absolutely. So prior to doing work in this space, I didn't know that the age of legal responsibility was 10. So that and what that means is a child can actually be arrested, charged, and imprisoned in a concrete cell. Some people tend to think it might be a house for naughty kids or something. It's a prison, and they can legally do that in Australia. And around the world, the average age of legal responsibility is 14. So we're actually dramatically behind the rest of the world on this. A lot of the Australian Medical Association, a lot of medical professionals have come out and said a child aged 10 to 13 doesn't have the neurological capacity to actually understand the ramifications of their actions. They can't comprehend it, but yet we're holding them legally responsible for that. So there is a nationwide movement happening at the moment called Raise the Age. There's a national campaign, and there's also individual campaigns within each state that are advocating for this. And it really disproportionately affects Aboriginal kids. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, particularly in places like the Northern Territory, where at times 100% of those detained are Indigenous kids in that age bracket, 10 to 13. So it's a huge issue. And as you can imagine, if you ask yourself the question, what's going on for a 10-year-old or 11-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old to end up being charged and in prison, you must assume that it's something incredibly traumatic in their lives, that it has meant that they're in that space, that they're stealing cars or graffitiing or causing whatever it is that they're doing. I think we as adults know better and need to ask ourselves what's going on for that kid, instead of incarcerating them, causing further harm, like traumatizing, taking away from family, community connections, not actually addressing what's going on for them. And we know that 80% of those young people are just going to reoffend. because
Yes.
they're then put into a system that gives them a community of people that are in that space, and it's of course for the harm, which will result in recidivism. So that's the campaign, and we're trying to create, with the help of an artist and a producer and a scriptwriter, an animation that will support that campaign, that will explain to the general public in terms that it's quite visual as well. We've got kind of painting a picture of a playground in surrounded by sort of jailer walls, that juxtaposition.
Wow.
Yeah, to kind of really hit home in the hearts of Australians, because, if I didn't know that and I was studying my Masters of Social Work at the time, how many other people don't know that that's going on?
Yep.
So the campaign has had some great national coverage. They were on the project recently and quite a few articles have come out. The Council of Attorneys General are meeting in July to talk about this, but the decision most likely won't be made until November. Where everyone meets. So sort of throughout the year, a big, call to action, what we need to be doing is making some noise about this, so that the Council Attorney General feel pressured, and government can feel confident in making that decision to raise the age.
Yes.
And so, we're really coming from that perspective of people don't know what they don't know. As soon as everyone I tell is just like, oh my God, what?
Yep.
They just didn't know. So we just want to make some noise about that, and in all kinds of ways. So that's something that I think all of us in this space need to get on board with this year.
Yeah. And as you said, as youth workers, social workers, psychologists, we know that, the brain development side of things, that lovely prefrontal cortex hasn't really fully grown until that kind of 25, 28-year-old process yet. We're expecting that 10-year-olds would have that fully rationalized thinking, that they know what they've done and why they've done it and the responsibility of that. It's just ludicrous, and it's archaic that we would treat children in that way, that we would treat children as adults, that we would give them the responsibility, but without any support behind that. And as you mentioned, highly traumatized young people too, quite often, that we're talking about here, not your run-of-the-mill happy-go-lucky kid that you see on Neighbours, but the children that have had really tough lives, have seen things that we wouldn't wish on our worst enemies, and then they're thrown into, as you said, concrete cells to take on that responsibility. The justice system is a really interesting term because we don't often rehabilitate and bring people back into our society. We take retribution for whatever the crime has been there. And when we're talking about trauma and retribution, they don't work together. And so this is a huge project, and it's a huge undertaking for a nation such as Australia to revamp the system, so that we're really looking at a process where young people that do have a little bit more cognitive understanding of what's going on, young people that get some support around trauma, looked at, rather than just the retribution side of things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we all want to live in a society where, young people are able to achieve their full potential, receive the supports that they deserve to receive, and then as a community feel safer and more united. I think we all want the same thing. I think people can't sometimes get confused about how we get there. And I think kind of philosophically as a society, it's almost it's sort of our ethos, punishment equals change of behavior. So, send the kid to the room and isolate them, and that sort of fixes the behavior. But we know as youth workers, social workers, and us in this space, that's not what happens for a young person. And so I think when we know better, like I said, we've just got to do better and make that change and support young people. And we actually, if some might say, oh, that sounds like a lot of money that you'd have to spend to create holistic support to address everything that's going on. But we know that each year, just one young person being the justice system costs $660,000. So it's just like, think if you could redistribute that money into support and therapy and whatever else is needed to address that young person's needs and whatever's going on for them, you would see a completely different world, I think.
Yes.
So it's just about, I think, moving it, the old, very old, as you said, kind of archaic justice system that has been set up a long time ago, and shifting it into something more progressive that actually works and serves both the young person and the community properly, which is with what we're trying to do, I guess, is keep pushing in that direction and getting our voice and the voices of young people heard in that process, because sometimes they can be drowned out if you don't have the platform and the backing, education, all those things. So yeah, it is a big mission, but really important. And I'm very glad that, I feel very privileged to be in this role, but that this campaign exists. And I'd really encourage anyone listening as well to get involved. There's so many ways that you can get involved in the campaign, and we really are stronger together. And we have power when we can unite our voice. So I think that's part of any kind of good campaign, is getting everyone's voice in the same room, getting us to agree, have a clear goal and mission. We actually have a leadership program right now, if anyone's interested in that, with some dedicated volunteers, if anyone had the time and wanted to take more of an active role. But there's a very kind of ways you can get involved. You can do a kitchen table conversation, as I said, even just getting active on social media and sharing resources and tiles and things that we have. You can find us, we're like Worth A and then 2, the second 2ND.
We'll
Chance.
pop that in the
bio,
comments,
yeah.
in the links at the back of the episode here too. So what's one definitive way that the youth workers listening to this podcast can support raising the age and the work that you're doing right now?
Right now, if you just head to the website, which we'll put in the comments and in the bio, our Worth a Second Chance website, there is a letter to MPs that you can sign. So it's really easy, it takes 1 minute, and you can just enter your name and address, and it will come up with your local MPs, and it will send out a pre-written letter saying why we should raise the age, and each letter that is sent, puts more pressure on the government and tells us that the people that you serve, because we are a government democracy, people that you serve want this change. And so that's one really powerful way. At the same time, you can also go sign onto the national campaign for raising the age. I think that's just raisetheage.org. Those are 2 really powerful mechanisms. And I think also just signing up to our general newsletter, we're really putting a big sort of lens on Raise the Age this year, and keeping everyone updated with what's happening and how they can get involved. So that may change over the year as different things come up in terms of how they can support the campaign. I think signing up to the mailing list is the best way to kind of keep on track of all that stuff. But yeah, I think just making it's so simple, isn't it? But making your voice heard, adding your voice, and then also passing it on and saying to the people in your community, hey, can you add your voice too? Did you know that this is going on? Did you know that a young person who is 10, 11, 12, 13 can be sent to jail, and it is actually jail?
Yes.
They probably won't know.
And I think most people, if you take away from the crime and punishment rhetoric, and you just think about a 10-year-old in jail, a 10-year-old in a concrete box, that just doesn't seem right.
10-year-olds in grade 4,
That's right.
A 10-year-old doesn't usually feel comfortable, walking home from school by themselves.
That's right.
10-year-old can't have Facebook or Instagram. They can't go get their ears pierced.
No driver's license, no voting privileges.
They're not allowed to cross the road by themselves legally.
Yeah. They can't sign up to a course at TAFE.
No
responsibilities in the world other than we'll put you in jail.
Other than we've decided that you can be legally accountable for your actions, 10-year-olds. It's just ludicrous, really, when you think about it. It's a no-brainer. But at the same time, we don't know if this will get passed. It was meant to be passed, in November last year, and it didn't happen. It got tabled. And so it's as ludicrous and as simple as it is, it actually won't change until we do something about it.
Yeah.
which, when do we make some noise? Because, there's other voices out there that will say, oh, it's too hard. What do we do with these kids? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we've written a whole very comprehensive document that is completely evidence-based that tells you what you can do with these kids to support them and get their lives back on track. So it just seems so simple that, of course, it's a no-brainer, we'll change it. But actually, unless we make some noise, it won't change.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's probably the best point to finish on. We need to make some noise, youth workers. So sign the petition, sign up to say we need to raise the age. We will put the links in the notes for today and get it out there. We've got until around November to get as many names out there as we possibly can saying that this needs to happen, and that these young people need our support, need our voice to help them to flourish, to become the best human beings that they possibly can be. So thanks so much, Jess, for chatting with us today about the campaign that you're doing and the work with JSS and this really amazing opportunity for youth workers to support young people and change something for good.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Aaron. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, get involved, everyone. And thanks for having me.
Great. See you later.
All right, bye.